Hi there, this is Jonathan Ginsberg. I'm a Social Security Disability attorney, and today I'd like to tell you why Social Security Disability judges like to issue favorable decisions based on the grid rules. And I've found this trend really been enforced for a number of years, that if I can squeeze a client into the grid rules, my chances of winning go way up. So if you're age 50 or older, you want to pay attention because the grid rules may be applicable to you. Now, as I've discussed elsewhere in my video series as well as on my website, the grid rules basically are a system where Social Security can award benefits based on certain categories. You've got to have a physical impairment, meaning something that limits you physically. You can't have depression and use the grid rules. It's got to be a physical problem. You have to be over the age of 50. You have to typically show a limited education, high school or less, although you can have a little bit more than high school, but it's easier to do if you only have a high school education. And you need to show that your work skills, you either have no skills at all, your unskilled work background, or you have work experience that was in a skilled or semi-skilled environment, but you have no transferable work skills. So basically the grid rules work best for people with a limited education and limited work skills who are over the age of 50. And that's really why judges like it, because it's a lot easier for a judge to evaluate your credibility. And you have to look at all these different factors. When you're arguing functional capacity, a judge has to look at a lot of different factors to determine whether or not you have the capacity to work. For the grid rules, the judge has to figure out whether you're eligible, whether you have the capacity to do sedentary work, light work, medium work, heavy work, that sort of thing. And that's simply looking at somebody and saying, could this person lift 20 pounds on a regular basis 2/3 of the day? So if you're a 95-pound female, a judge can look at you and say, I don't think this person could lift 20 pounds ongoing all day long for 6 hours during the course of a day. It's a lot easier philosophically and intellectually to kind of rationalize that, to look at somebody and make that determination. If the judge sees you walk in, you're on a cane, or you need some other assistive device, it's a lot easier to figure out you could not lift 10 pounds on a frequent basis. So that's really why the grid rules work. The grid rules, again, are going to look at your physical capacity. Are you limited to sedentary, light, medium, or heavy? And based on that, and based on your work background and education, they call it a grid rule because it's a grid. You just kind of follow the table across and figure out whether or not you are disabled or not. I have a website dedicated to the grid rules called gridrules.net, www.gridrules.net. And if you look there, you can see how the grid rules work. And so first you look at your age, then you figure out what your functional capacity is. Is it sit-down work or sedentary work? Is it light work? Is it medium work? Is it heavy work? And then based on that, we can figure out where you fit on the grid. So my experience has been judges really like to award cases based on the grid rules. They typically like claimants who are over the age of 50, especially ones with a long work background, and they will often try to find a way to fit you into the grid rule, even if it's a little bit of a stretch, by making a conclusion about your capacity to work. And the other thing you can do with grid rules, which again, you don't see it that often, but it does happen enough to be significant, that is, even if you're not quite 50, if you're 49 and a half, I've seen judges use the grid framework to still fit you into the grid rules. So for the judge, it's a lot easier way to approve a case, much less likely he's going to be reversed. And believe me, hearing judges do not like to be reversed by the appeals council for using bad logic, bad reasoning. They're less likely to be overturned based on the grid rules. It's a lot faster decision to write. It's just much easier for the judge. And my philosophy is always, whatever is easier for the judge, let's do that, because again, that gives you the best chance at hopefully winning. So that's why judges like to use the grid rules. I think if you're over 50, you always want to look at them. Is there any way we can squeeze you into it? And again, if you can fit into the grid rules, my experience has been that judges like to award cases based on the grid rules, which are also called the medical vocational guidelines. So look at that, look for that if you're over age 50. Hope you found this helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up on YouTube or a like on Facebook. Please subscribe to our channels, our YouTube channel, and like our Facebook page. And if I can be of any assistance to you, if you have any questions about the grid rules, how they apply to you, please reach out to me personally. Happy to try to answer your questions. Jonathan Ginsberg here, and I'll talk to you next video.